الهيئة العامة للسياحة والآثار، ملتقى السفر والاستثمار السياحي.
مساء الخير. Good evening. Salam alaikum. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share with you all our experience in Mexico. And congratulations to the organizers of the event for this wonderful exposition and this summit. I wanted to share with you all really quick about our experience of the world of the Mayas. But before I do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about our experience in the travel industry. You know, technology is something that is influencing our lives. And I would like to ask you, please feel free to raise your hand when I'm presenting in case that you have any questions, okay? I want this to be two ways as much as possible. I have two children, two kids, a boy and a girl. My boy, his name is Alan. Right now, he's 8 years old. But when he was 4, I remember one day that I got home with an iPad, brand new iPad, that I got from work, and he asked me, "Mother, could you introduce me to your iPad?" So proper. And I said, "Can I introduce you to my iPad?" "Sure, here you have it." 20 minutes later, I was shocked because 12 games were already downloaded and he didn't even know how to write or read. And I was so concerned, so afraid, and I told him, "Alan, what do you do?" And he said, "Mother, don't worry, it's a free, you won't be charged." Free? What do you mean free? You don't even know how to write or read. He said, "No, free is gratis, which means no cost. Don't worry, Mother." But 12 games. And to me, that was an interesting lesson because technology is changing our lives. A 4-year-old was downloading already 12 games in a very short period, and that tells you how it's changing our life. Now, everything is connected. My son keeps telling me, "How do you go to the school when internet did not exist?" My daughter, her name is Kayla, she's 10, she cannot believe that we didn't have Wikipedia. I had to explain to her that there were libraries and we had to go to the libraries to get the books, and I had to read a lot because we didn't have internet. For them, impossible to go to the school without Wikipedia. And in Skype, that's another thing. I communicate from here, from Riyadh, to my kids more than 10,000 miles away via Skype. That's changing our life. Now, a lot of changes are coming. If we look back, in the last couple of years, we have seen more changes than in the last 20 years. My degree is in computer science, and I remember when I finished college, a lot of things that I learned in the first year did not exist. They were already obsolete, which is very interesting. Have someone here about the 3D printers? Are you aware about what is it? Raise your hand. What is a 3D printer? A 3D printer right now is costing about $1,000. And they are hoping to develop a technology to make it very affordable, like around $100. So imagine this in your house in the next year or a couple of months, where your kids are going to be able to print out their toys, to get their toys 3D. My son cannot wait for this printer, of course. This is a reality right now. The 3D printers is something that is happening. So all the toys that they can imagine, they're going to be able to produce that at home. The only thing that we're going to be buying is the design systems, the technology, so that they can create and invent the toys that they want. This is a printer from Toys R Us, a very popular toy store in the US, everywhere, and some other places in Europe. As you can see here, this girl is printing or producing in 3D a lot of toys. You can produce whatever you want. It's just a matter of cost. Being able right now, a printer is around $1,000. Like when the cell phones were released, you remember the cell phones were very expensive. I know some of you here are very young and you probably don't remember that, but when the cell phones came out to the market, it was very expensive. Now anyone can get a cell phone. You can produce a basketball, for instance. You can produce shoes. That's wonderful for women. Can you imagine all the shoes that we can have at home? That we don't have to go to the shoe store anymore and have a pair of shoes for every single day throughout the year? That's going to be wonderful. I cannot wait for that printer, because in one printer you're going to be able to produce everything, depending of what you want: a basketball, a ball, or a shoe, or whatever, toys or games. So that's technology, and it's changing our life. Another thing that is coming, and I don't know, have you heard, is the drones. What is a drone? It's a computer that flies around, and you can buy that system today for less than $100. The only problem is the regulations. And the Department of Transportation in the US is, as we speak, developing those regulations, because they want to have hundreds of thousands of drones flying all over the US. Can you imagine? That can cause some accidents. But as you can see here, Domino's already tested to deliver the pizzas. This is faster, it's cheaper, and you're going to be able to have your own. We have also, for instance, Taco Bell, if you want tacos, you want pizzas, and Amazon for sure is thinking about delivering CDs and products with the drones. This exists today, and you will see this more and more, which is wonderful because it's going to make our life easier. The challenge with the drones, as you can see that small drone, what is, do you think? It's privacy. Can you imagine that little robot flying around your house and taking pictures, for instance, and that's not yours? That's why the regulations are so important. That's why the government has to define the rules. Where do we have those drones? Do we want them in our premises, in our home, or they can be outside? The drones have a lot of positive effects, because you can have ambulances, you can have emergency flying your way. You don't have to wait for an ambulance. But the drones are going to bring a lot of positive to our world. At the same time, this guy, for instance, my son is dying to get one of these. Can you imagine a robot as a friend that will help you to do your homework and will tell you what to do and can play with you around? These guys are going to be around very soon, and there will be good toys for our kids, and they will be helping us to educate the new generations. Something that is here today is all the mobile devices. Can we think about 10 years ago? We didn't have this 10 years ago. We didn't have the iPads connected. We were not able to book or make reservations online. This has changed our life. And now when we think about it, we believe that we cannot live without an iPad and without some of these devices. This has impacted so much our life that, as you can see here, in every 60 seconds, what happens around the world. In 60 seconds, and I don't know if you can see this chart, 320 new Twitter accounts are created. But what's interesting, look at the emails. 168 million emails are sent in 60 seconds. Is that impacting our lives? Absolutely. We're overflowed of information, but that's changing a lot. In 60 seconds, for instance, 70 domains, more than 70 are created, more than 600 new videos are uploaded. In 60 seconds, as you can see there, more than 11,000, what we have here, music are displayed. So this is wonderful, this is good, and it's changing our life. Now, the good news is that the technology is here to help us, and it's impacting every single industry, including the travel industry. Why? Because the travel industry has becoming a commodity. As we will see there, we have the technology in the airlines, we have the technology in the entrance at the airports, we have the technology in the payments. It's pretty much everywhere. It's in our devices. If you have an iPhone, you have your world in your hands. If you have a BlackBerry, if you have an Android, your world is in your hands. You can do everything, including the entire process of the travel industry. For instance, you can start with the booking. You can book to a travel agency has a website. You can book a trip. The entire trip can be booked online. You can have your boarding pass. Don't talk to anyone. Just have your boarding pass and then go to the gate with your boarding pass without even talking to the agents. Scan your boarding pass. This is a reality. Your visa. In some countries, the visa is online. It's through your phone as well. Arrivals at the airport. In the US, if you travel recently, and in some countries in Asia, and more are adopting this for their citizens, you have this kiosk that scans your eyes, your fingers. You don't talk to an agent. This is in the US called Global Entry. So it's the same thing, totally touchless. We also, the car rental. I can make a reservation in my phone, and with the same phone, I choose the car and open the car with the key in the phone without talking to an individual. Totally touchless, 100%. If I go to the hotel, same thing. I don't need to check in. I already pre-check in, and I have the room 412, opens the door with my phone. This technology exists and is everywhere. So the entire process, end to end, is impacted by technology, touchless, which is interesting. When is this? When? Where? This is all over the US, Asia, and Europe today. Yes, this has been for 1 year already in the US. You get, and I will tell you the chains that they can do that, but you, with your phone, you do the check-in, and you have the key in your phone, and you just plug in and open the door of the hotel. That's currently as we speak. So you don't talk to anyone, and from the moment that you leave your house until your hotel, totally touchless, which is interesting because the technology is impacting us. And as we look at the travel industry, travel and tourism is a huge industry. This is the contribution according to the World Tourism and Travel Council, that they group the private sector worldwide, $7.6 trillion in contribution. Very interesting. 277 million jobs around the world depend on this industry, which means 1 in every 11 jobs have to do with this wonderful and beautiful industry. And 9.8 of the global GDP has to do with the industry. And when we compare this with other industries, as you see below, is bigger than mining, bigger than automotive, and they make a lot of noise, and the travel industry doesn't make that much, and manufacturing. So it's a wonderful industry, and it's pretty good. So at the same time that we know the technology is affecting our lives, travel is becoming a commodity, at the same time the traveler is looking for the experience. It's all about the experience, because the travel process is touchless, has a lot of technology, but the experience is totally different. The experience has to do with something unique, with something different. Why do you travel? Why do you choose to go to fly in a balloon? Or why do you decide to go to a place in Alaska? Or why do you go to a wonderful place to have an amazing local experience and connect with the culture, for instance, here in Saudi? It's all about that experience. There are some people that they like the adrenaline, and they pay to be close to sharks. I'm not one of those. I hate sharks myself, but you will see this more and more. This about the getting close to nature and about the adventure and that experience that brings a unique opportunity to connect with nature. At the same time, we see that more and more is being cultural. 37% of the trips around the world, they have to do with cultural traveling. And we have great heritage. I'm very impressed with what I have seen in Saudi, which is beautiful, it's amazing, and you have a lot of opportunities here to connect with that local culture of every single province, because every province is like a little country within Saudi that has something unique and different. The travelers, they like to enjoy the local food and the traditions. And I don't know about you, and I don't know how you do it personally. I have gained in 4 days 3 kilos already. And I don't know what I'm going to do back home. I have to go back to the diet, but the food here is amazing. I love the food. It has been really, really good. And I can see this is a great opportunity to travel around the country because it's just so delicious. It's the best reason to travel besides culture around the country and enjoy that local connection, which is wonderful. When you travel, you like to connect. Here are some kids, and that's about connecting with loved ones and connecting with the local traditions and the local culture. It's about living that experience. We know that time is priceless. We don't have time. We don't want to spend time in the travel process. That's what is commodity and why we use technology and why it's so fast. But at the same time that we use technology and the airlines and the GDSs and everyone is using technology, the travel experience is very important. And more than ever, they depend on travel agencies, on tour operators to help them to develop those unique travel experiences so that they can connect with the locals, they can rest and relax, and they really enjoy at the maximum their time. Now, it's very important, and I'm going to go through some definitions here. What is a travel experience? First rule, every destination is unique. Every destination has its own DNA. Very important. The DNA, I don't know if you remember, your DNA and my DNA has the same dynamic sequence of genetic attributes, but when you add them, everyone is different. In other words, we have like the same faces, but when you put them together, your DNA and my DNA is totally different. Every destination is exactly like that. Every destination has a very dynamic sequence of differentiators, and it is very important to identify the DNA of that specific and every specific destination so that we can identify what's unique. This is the photo of the DNA, and to explain myself, what we do is, or we have to do is that we go through destination development, looking at the DNA. You have to develop destination and make sure that you consider that DNA, what's unique about the destination. You look at the market segmentation of that destination and the DNA. Then you look at the product development. If I'm going to develop a product for that destination, I need to keep in mind the market segmentation, and I need to keep in mind, of course, the DNA in order to connect. Then we have the experience design, and I will share an example with every step so that it is clear for you all. Investment management, the same thing. You have to invest in something that is related to the DNA. Then you have the promotion, the commercialization, and the branding. Everything, as you see here, is connected by the DNA. Now, if a destination has one of these steps broken, regardless of the promotion and the advertising that you do, you're not going to be 100% successful. In order to be successful, you have to be all connected. And let me give you an example that probably if you have children, you guys have children here, anyone has children? Are you familiar with Disney? Is anyone familiar with Disney? When Disney released a product, for instance, when they released Tinkerbell, you find, or Nemo, everyone is trying to find Nemo, and you found Nemo everywhere, right? And nowadays it's Frozen. They do a good job having that new character everywhere. the movies, the credit cards, the toys, the park, everywhere is connected. Everywhere, the destination, the product, the experience, everywhere. They do a good job making sure that everything is connected in the experience. So that's why they are the masters of marketing and masters of commercialization from the private sector. No one does it as good as Disney. No one. Well, here's the same thing. Imagine that our DNA of the destination is unique, and then we use it in every phase of this sequence of differentiators. I'll share with you a case of Mexico. Mexico, as you can see here in the map, is very remote, very far, interesting geographical position, border north with the US and south with Central America. And Mexico, as you will see here, is kind of, as I say, unique. But it's the same with Saudi. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, very unique, very interesting. We have 31 states plus the Mexico City. Here I believe there are 13 provinces, is that right? Every province is unique, totally different. I was so impressed with the photos here. I've never in my life, for instance, have seen a camel with the snow. That doesn't connect to me. But in the North province, you find camels with the snow. Or if you go southwest to Albaha, it's another very interesting region. Every region here is different. We have about the same. Every state is like a little country that has something unique. The average population of the country, the age 29 years old, is kind of a youth population. We, as I say, have a border with the US of 3,000 kilometers. The land is 2 million square kilometers, very similar to Saudi, I believe. You guys have a bigger country than Mexico. I think it's 2.3 or 2.4 in the case of Saudi. The population, 160 million. That's a lot of Mexicans, but we are all over the country. And the coastline, 11,000 kilometers. Tourism is very important for Mexico. It's the third source of income, represents 9% of our GDP. 2.5 million Mexicans live directly from tourism and 5 million indirectly. We have 43,000 economic units, which are like 80% of those is medium and small and medium enterprises, such as tour operators, travel agencies, restaurants, hotels, for instance. We receive 29 million international travelers, and very interesting, 180 million domestic trips, because Mexicans like to travel a lot. Now, it was not like that all the time. We used to not travel a lot domestic, and here I have some friends from Mexico that can tell you probably 20 years ago we were traveling to Acapulco, we were traveling to some destinations, but not throughout the country a lot like nowadays. Mexico has some interesting assets. When we look at those assets, it's what do we have in terms of tourism? 39 UNESCO World Heritage. Our food, for instance, the gastronomy, because the recipes have been transferred by generation, is also called intangible UNESCO. Magical towns, that I'll talk about that a little bit more, 3,000 years of history, more than 40,000 archaeological sites, 62 ethnic groups, and you can go on the list. And that sounds wonderful. Same thing with the infrastructure in terms of rooms, natural areas protected, 70 convention centers, and all of that. But you know what? I have to say, it was sad that a lot of Mexicans were not traveling with this infrastructure within Mexico. A lot of people from the north of the country, especially, they were very familiar with Houston, with San Antonio, shopping centers, they knew SeaWorld, but they didn't know the Maya cultures, or they didn't know San Cristobal de las Casas, or Chiapas for whatever reason. So they were very good going north, but not that good going south, until we started paying attention to the domestic travelers, because we have an interesting heritage, and as you can see, all these assets that a lot of people weren't enjoying, and somehow we were not communicating that internally. So we tried to decide, okay, how can we decode the destination DNA? Because we had some challenges in 2008 due to the economic and financial crisis, and the travelers from the US to Mexico were declining. So we needed to do something to incentivize domestic traveling. And the goal, as I say, was to try to go through this chain for a specific region. And that's the example that I want to say. And the example is that if you look at the chain, I'm going to go over this chain as an example for you all. The first one is, let's look at the region, a route, so that we can develop to incentivize domestic and international. And that's the Maya route. If you remember the map of Mexico, southeast coast, that's what we have in the peninsula of Yucatan. And right here, I know you cannot see the mouse, on the right top, right left, you have Cancun. That is a very interesting destination. And Cancun was competing with the Caribbean. It was competing with Puerto Rico, with Miami. But yes, it was competing only for what we call sun and beach destination, which means that people were going to Cancun just for the fun environment, but we didn't have a differentiator. So Cancun, it has been a nice model, because when we built Cancun, it was something as an innovation, something unique, and I'm going to go over that. But this region is much more than Cancun. Here on the bottom right, you have Cancun, but on the left side, you have all the culture that we had available to our disposal in that region that we were not considering. Cancun is a destination that 40 years ago did not exist. Did not exist. It was totally plain, and I'll go over that in a minute. But the proximity to the US made it a very interesting location. And as you will see in this, you see on the top left, that's how it was Cancun. And in the bottom, this is the last picture, I think it's from 2007. Look at the difference. Amazing. We found on the top an area with a huge opportunity and a huge potential. And we came up with a master plan, an environmental impact of the assets, define the regional infrastructure, the connectivity needed, and went for every single step, all the way to the maintenance. If you travel Cancun, what we did is, to Cancun, we defined where every single thing was going to be to the detail. And right here, if you see on the top right, this is part of the master plan that Cancun had exactly defined where we were going to have hotels, where we're going to have shopping centers, where we're going to have restaurants, to the maximum detail. So the government acquired the land, developed the infrastructure, divided the land, developed what was needed, and then invited the Bank of Mexico, and through loans, was able to sell the land to investors. Investors such as Melia, Barceló, Marriott acquired the land, and we helped them maintaining that infrastructure. So they were able to recover in a short time frame their investment. We also opened the airport, the connectivity, and has been a very interesting case in terms of destination. As you see here, the first steps were from the state and municipality creation, because there was not a municipality, there was no government. It was part of Peninsula of Yucatan, and now it's a very different state with a master plan, an international airport, everything from scratch. So in the 70s, Cancun was like that, nothing. It was just a place with a lot of potential. But we planned that and made it fully integrated so that today, is like this, huge transformation. Cancun is the main hub of the Caribbean and receives a little bit over 13 million visitors and has more than 30,000 rooms. Now, very interesting, as you see here, some of the achievements was the original plan and how we passed the original plan. You will see that also here, that the original plan was to have 25,000 rooms. We have 30 plus 35 in Riviera Maya, which makes like almost 65,000 rooms. So it has been an interesting success that we have been able to replicate in different parts of the country. Cancun was the first in the right, if you see here, but we have been able to do Huatulco, Iztapa, all the way to Cabo. fully integrated centers that the government has invested with the private sector, which is interesting. Now, it sounds great. We had a great destination, but what about the experience, especially during difficult times? We had challenging times in 2008, as I say, when the US has this financial and economical crisis. And on top of that, we had the H1N1. So was the growth and competitive advantage sustainable for Cancun when we had next door Dominican Republic, as I say, Punta Cana, we had Cuba, and we had some other great destinations throughout the Caribbean. And we ask ourselves, okay, what was unique about this region? What is unique about Cancun? You have the great infrastructure, beautiful ocean, but it's the Caribbean. Everyone can copy that. What is really the DNA of the Mexican Caribbean or that region? And that's when we challenge ourselves to come up with the DNA of the region and look at the opportunity and look at some other destinations and come up with the Maya region. And that's why we decided to look at what was inside of the country. And what was inside? The Maya world. Dominican Republic and Cuba and the Caribbean have a Maya world? No, they have different things, but they don't have the Mayas. The Mayas, has someone here heard about the Mayas? I hope you have. No one? No one, just two? Interesting, huh? A few here? That's good, because I'm going to be asking. That's very good. The Mayas is a culture that was spread to 5 countries. Mexico, what is today Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. During the classic period, this is 3 to 900 BC. The Mayas had a fascination for building towers, cities. They were very precise in math. They were great mathematicians. And very interesting, in the bottom, right here, this is the pyramid of Chichen. If you see there, it has 91 steps in each side, and it's pointing the sun. So when you do 91 times 4, it's 364, and the top is 365. What is 365? The days of the calendar, but the calendar that we know today, not the calendar that they knew back then. Their calendar is really precise. Their calendar can predict solstitials, or can predict eclipses, or can predict the changes of the stations. Very precise, without using the same, and they were not using the same numbers that we are using right now. And this is only in this part of the world. We have over 150 archaeological sites, and they sit alongside of lakes and rivers. There's something called cenotes, that are underground rivers that you can dive, and they are like temples because it's in the water, fresh water, but they have a lot. Now, and the other thing that we look, because of the timing was in the essence, we look about the calendar. And very interesting, in 2012, according to the Mayas, was the end of the calendar. And then we started thinking about an opportunity and say, okay, if 2012, which is 21/12/12, 21 of December of 2012 was the end of the Mayas, is that the end of the world, or is that the beginning of a new era? And that's how we started thinking about promoting this Mayan case. The Mayan case, what we decided to do is include the 5 states, and we invited our friends from the other 4 countries, and we used this methodology to look at the locations and say, let's look at the DNA, the Maya culture, and let's transfer that to the Maya region. And here you can see the 5 states and the 5 countries that I just mentioned, that they have something in common. So the first step was to do an assessment. Okay, what do we have in these 5 countries, in these 5 states, that this can be applied today, for instance, to the track or the route of, you guys have the Red Sea. We can do something similar with the Red Sea, or we can do something similar with the Gulf, Arabian Gulf, or we can do something similar with the paths that you have here. So we look at the assets that we had, and then we look at the existing locations. Yes, Cancun was built from scratch, but the other towns that we have here already existed. Campeche, Mérida were already there. So we look at can we improve the urban image? Do they need signage? Do we need to train the local tourist providers? Do we need infrastructure? We had to do an assessment as a second part of the 16 destination in order to complete the destination development phase. Destination development is to look at the entire destination of the region. The second phase is market segmentation. Who do we want to promote the route? Do we want to promote domestic? Do we want to promote international? Do we want to talk about luxury, retired, families, young adults, children? Very important, the segmentation. After you have the segmentation, you can talk about product. And product has to do with the heritage, the adventure, the culture. Is that only sun and beach? What do we talk about the product? Well, product right here is activities. What are you going to do while you're there? Services, tangible. What is the infrastructure? And here, the tour operators are crucial, and the local private sector is very important for the product development, for being able to have something, because yes, it's very nice to go to a destination, but if there's nothing to do, what are you going to do? You're not going to spend your money. You need to have things to do. One thing that we learned is that we didn't have any museums of the Maya world in the Maya region. How bad was that? Pretty bad. You were traveling to Cancun or Merida and there were no Maya museums or museums with Maya content. So we had to work with the private sector to build museums so that the local visitors can come and see what was that about. That was part of the product development as well. We work on a cluster to understand, okay, what are the new products? How do we promote that with the community? And also, how do we work together, making sure that we keep the DNA in the center. If that was not part of the DNA, it was hard to follow with that effort. Once we have the product, then you can talk about the experience. And that's what is very unique. The experience is what gives you the satisfaction, connects, the feelings. For instance, on the top right, that's an underwater museum that we have in Cancun, which was wonderful. That was part of the experience, yes, but we needed more things. That was very good for cultural, but we had also adventure, like spending time with the pink flamingos, that they have millions in a sanctuary, beautiful, or walking to go to Calakmul, one of the lost parts of the pyramids that is actually bigger, the dances. That's part of the experience. Very important experience, the food. I don't know if because I eat a lot Mexican food, I love the food here, but you guys have an amazing food. But here you will see that the gastronomy is also part of our blood and very important. That's also very, very important. Something that we consider is what we call pueblos mágicos, or magical towns. These are villages that we declare that they have unique cultural experience. They have something very important, and the locals are preserving that heritage, and we wanted to consider them as part of the Maya experience. We also work as part of the phase, as you can see there, of the commercialization and strategy with partners, all the partners, to inspire, plan, compare, book, travel, and then why not share the experience, but always with the DNA in mind. The DNA was at the center of the Maya route. Local tour operators, very important. They were our best allies to define exactly the experience and to help us. You can have the best destination, but if you don't have good local tour operators that can really amaze the traveler and have this experience to be offered, becomes challenging. And then we provide the tools to the local tour operators and the travelers. This is a platform, for instance, that we develop online to share photos and experiences. This is another one for the travel agencies. The travel agencies were able to go here, look at the products, so that we gave them the tools to sell the experiences. This is one for the tour operators, that here I would say, okay, I have 5 days. and I want to visit the Maya route, and I want to see these 3 cities, and this tool will tell you how many days should you spend in each city, what restaurants you should visit, where you can stay, what to do, and the tour operators will take this information and do what is called an FIT and sell the package to the travelers. As you can see here with the dates and everything, we partner with the GDSs so that everyone who had access, GDS is the system that the travel agencies use, it's a global distribution system, and the GDS was able to pull the airline, the bus, the hotel, the car, and put it here together for the entire experience through vacations. Once that the distribution was in place, then we started to promoting the campaigns. These are some of the campaigns. For instance, this one is that related to the underwater museum. That one is more related to the adventure. I don't know, have you ever seen the shark whale? That's the shark whale. You can swim with the shark whale. It's the size of a whale, but it's a shark. But it's totally inoffensive, and you can scuba dive with that. It's like 18 meters long, pretty big. But that's a nice experience in Mexico. Trees 100 feet underwater, just in something that is called cenotes. That is part of the Maya culture, and that's what we call the campaigns Mexico, the place you thought you knew. Now it's called Live It to Believe It, but it's about the same feeling. And then you have on the left the Maya 2012, and we had a huge campaign in London and everywhere that basically was saying, do you know that according to the Mayas, the world is going to end 21/12/12? Well, we believe that is the beginning of a new era. But you know what? If you want to find out, you have to come to Mexico and see it yourself. That was the campaign. And you know what? We had a lot of people, domestic and international, very curious, and they were trying to find out what was the case. We had campaigns also in the most important magazines, including National Geographic, partnerships with car rentals. We had launching events, real time. President Calderon, for instance, launched the 5 states that we had. And remember, we had 140 archaeological sites. We chose 10, 2 from each important city, Eslan, Calakmul, Comancán, Pomona, Iztapa, Palenque, Chichen Itzá, y Tulum and Cobá, so that will help us to create a route, because you cannot have a path with 140 archaeological sites. You need to make some sort of recommendations. We also partnered with Peter Greenberg so that he interviewed the Mayas, because they still live, they speak Mayan, and they keep their traditions, and President Calderon was introducing them, and this was aired on PBS in the US. T20, very interesting. We created so much momentum that even President Calderon chose the pyramid for the logo of the G20. In the G20, you see the leaders of the world meeting, and as you can see here on the right, that's the pyramid, right? Seen from the top view. And T20, we had the leaders of tourism. And as you can see here, we had His Highness, he was there in Mexico talking to President Calderon and exchanging experience. And on the left, that's the Pyramid of Chichen. Those are the leaders of tourism for the G20 economies that, because they heard so much noise, they wanted to see it. So I took them there. Some of them they climbed, some of them they didn't climb, because now it's a little bit dangerous to climb all the way up. We had a minister that went all the way, and then he was scared to come down. So I had to send someone to get him, and he was climbing, you know, like a little kid, seated in step by step, because he couldn't walk. He was so afraid that the entire group had to wait for him 2 hours to get down, because he was frozen on the top, but he wanted to go all the way to the top. But this was a wonderful thing that they even included the Mayas. Here, some of the accomplishments. We had more than 8 million websites talking about the calendar. 8 million websites. Even Hollywood took that theme and made a really bad movie about the end of the world, but that helped us to create some noise. We had more than 13 million visitors that traveled to the Cancun airport. We had the highest hotel occupancy and continue to grow. We increased the domestic traveler like never before, and also the international travelers. We saw a growth very interesting from many destinations. Here on the left is we launched the Maya Fitur, and what I did, I invited the other countries to join us because this was a regional effort. Yes, Mexico did all the work, but we had to invite our friends from Central America. Now, during the process, this is very important. We wanted to develop a competitive advantage by guaranteeing a great travel experience. We wanted to facilitate domestic and international investment and also have a sustainable long-term growth. And these are some of the actions that we consider. For instance, the students, they wanted to be part of this event. They wanted to be part of the Mayas. So what we did is we created a program called Touristic Ambassadors. We invited students from different schools. We trained them, and then they work as interns at the airports, at the different locations, advising the travelers what to do and where to go. But could you imagine, if you're a student, we would pay you a vacation 1 month in one of these destinations, and your job was just to recommend what to eat, where to go, what to visit, and welcome people. They love it. We had a lot of students, and of course, we gave them all the training about the Maya culture. We also had a hotline that we launched in case any challenges, questions, whatever. This was available in the first phase in English, French, and Spanish. We had support on the road for people that they were driving. They had support on the road in case that the car was broken, and different things here to make sure the pre-travel, during travel, and post-travel. The post-travel was crucial, which was testimonials, satisfaction surveys, referrals, and sharing the experience. And also we invited some Mexicans, influence leaders like celebrities, different people that they were leaders in their communities to come and travel and share the experience through Facebook, Twitter, with the followers so that they can talk about how was it. I truly believe that tourism brings the best opportunity for investment by far. And I think that here you have a wonderful opportunity. These are just 3 examples of routes that could be wonderful that you can work on, and I know that you're working already, but I would love to travel and see them. And domestic, you can have people traveling to the Red Sea, the Arabian Gulf, the desert tracks, and visit all these beautiful locations and enjoy the wonderful heritage that exists in this country. At the end of the day, it's all about job creation too. If we help the communities, the villages, they are going to be able to create jobs and have social benefits. The leaders, they already understand, and that's why in the G20 declaration, they signed the agreement to support travel for job creation for the first time ever. And I have to say here, thanks to the Prince too, because he was instrumental in supporting us, Prince Sultan, when he was in Mexico, we were able to include this in the declaration of the leaders of the G20. The leaders were supporting the travel industry, and which is traveling more. At the end of the day, travel is knowledge. We know that. Make us proud. When we understand the different cultures, what we do is we create empathy. And when we have empathy, we have a better world. We have a better understanding. There's a huge opportunity here to buy the countries from the Gulf region to come and see the wonderful heritage that you have. There's a wonderful opportunity to travel within Saudi to learn about the culture, the food and everything, as you have wonderful assets. Thank you very much. Shukran. Hopefully this was helpful. Now I don't know if there are any questions, or I was talking too much. There's a question in the back. Do we have a mic? Or can you just... I had a video and I didn't want to project that because I thought it was going to be too loud.
like the combination between what we heard and saw happening in Mexico and Saudi Arabia. I wanted to thank you again for the information. My question is that the collaboration between the public sector and the private sector is extremely crucial. And we saw that the Mexican government developed the land and they aided the private sector. How did you know, with your little knowledge about the Saudi Arabia regulation and the rules and politics, how would you depict what we saw happening in Mexico with what we are going to have in Saudi Arabia? Do you think?
Thank you, Dr. Shakir, and that's an excellent question. And I didn't include more details because of the sake of time, but you're absolutely right. Something that we have learned throughout the years is that the private sector plays a crucial role. But not only the private sector, in Mexico we also have the unions, we have the academia, we have the Congress, you have the different players. So something that we did is that we engaged them early on in the process, so that they were part of the process. We talked to them about when we did the assessment at the beginning, we invited them to be part of the process. They had an opinion and they shared with us valuable recommendations that we consider for the definition of this particular route. Now, in terms of tourism as a whole, I can tell you that something that we did in Mexico is, for instance, a national agreement where we had specific actions, time frames, and things to do to implement from every single group within the sector. So they have to be engaged, because if they are not engaged, they are going to think that this is a program from the government and they are not going to follow and implement that. If they're engaged, it's easier to see later the value and be part of this. But at the beginning, they have to be part of the program, for sure. Go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. My name is I'm a marketing specialist for us. I like the discussion today. And I like your process with the Kenyan youth process. But what was missing from the DNA is the target market and the market segmentation for Kenya. Was the Mexican people, Mexican population, was your target market or international? Because that is a major issue for us in Saudi Arabia when we have to develop our destination.
Right. That's a very good question, and just for the benefit of time, I didn't include all the details, but we had 4 different groups, okay? The first group was domestic. We wanted to make sure that Mexicans were traveling to Mexico. And what we promote to the Mexicans was very different than what we promote to the other 3 groups. Now, for the Mexicans, we had couples, we had families, and we had retired, like people that already, they retired from work and they want to travel, right? Like my parents, for instance. So we had these 3 groups, and what we were promoting was totally different. For instance, the retired people wanted to see more the colonial cities. Not the entire route, but a portion of the route. The families, they wanted to see more adventure, more different destinations. So we had a specific strategy, as I say, for the domestic travelers, that it was totally different than the strategy for the US market, totally different for the European market and the Latin American market. We had, because what we learned is that the Europeans, for instance, they were more interested in culture, okay? And they like, for instance, comparing Cancun and Playa del Carmen. The Europeans didn't want to go to Cancun. They wanted to go to Playa, and they wanted to go to Merida and Tulum. But the Americans prefer more Cancun and Chichen Itza. So depending of the nationality was the product that we were offering and the campaign. Who helped us to validate that content were the tour operators. We work with the tour operators, the domestic tour operators, that we call them receptive, and they told us basically, they help us to validate what was important for the Mexicans. And then the European tour operators help us for the product for the Europeans, same thing for the US, same thing for the South Americans. The Brazilians, for instance, very different than the Europeans. So we had to, this was a very complex, thorough process, but because we wanted to include the world, as we were creating a lot of momentum, that's what we had to do different products. But the beginning was domestic, because we had an issue with the number of tourism arrivals that we were having, but then we also included international in the second phase. Any more questions? No? I think no. Well, thank you very much. There's a question here.
Thank you, Gloria. It was a fantastic presentation. I want to ask you, how long did it take, and how long time it take from the staff prospect until we find this big project?
Well, in the case of the Maya route, because of the complexity and the fact that we were targeting different markets all over the world, it took us like 7 months or 8 months probably. But this was a very complex route, as you will see, because here we had to choose the destination depending on the segment. For something domestic, it's less than that, much more less. Here is that it's easier because you have just one type of traveler, and then of course you have within that segment different groups. But when you add more complexity and you have different flavors, if you will, different segments, it takes more time. And also the campaigns are different. We had advert campaigns in German, in English, in French, for instance, in Spanish. That adds a lot of complexity. For domestic, it's easier because here would be Arabic and perhaps a little bit of English. In our case, it was Spanish, no English needed for the domestic, pretty much. So that's why we launched first the Mexican, and we launched that actually early on, and then we launched the international. The Mexican was launched first because we were ready first for the domestic. And then the internationals, we launched that depending on the markets and the events.
Thank you, Ms. Gurley. I have a question. You mentioned at the beginning 80% of the companies working as SMEs, small and medium companies. How did you get them involved? How did you get the locals participating in investment and development destinations, small and medium companies to work in tourism and develop these destinations? How is it? Do they have the culture? Do they have the business mind? How did you do it?
Right, that's a very good question. 80% of our industry are small and medium enterprises, and we have different programs for them to improve their quality of what they deliver. For instance, we have programs to train them to do a business plan, to run an operation, to get more modern and things like that. Now, for this particular case, we work by segments, which means for the tour operators, we work with them, give them the product, training them, and the platform. For the restaurants, we help them to make sure that they had the right certifications, the right measurements. This was part of the assessment. When we did the assessment of who was living in this region, how many restaurants we had, how many hotels did we have, how many tour operators, we created a database. And that database was the starting point for us. And then we started quantifying, okay, how many stars, how many hotels do we have? 1 star, 2 star, 3 stars? Do we have enough rooms? And then we had to work with the different areas to make sure that they were working on the quality, keeping them engaged. Sometimes through the, I don't know if you guys are organized here through associations. For instance, the Tour Operator Association help us to bring all the tour operators. The car rentals, there were like 5. That was easy. We invited them all to have one session. We told them what we wanted to do. They were very excited, and they basically included in all their advertising our campaigns. We shared all the content. It was a very transparent thing. We shared all the content, all the information, and they took it as theirs. So that, and they start using that, and they start producing videos, and they start producing a lot of material and the routes and everything. So when we launched it, everyone was engaged and it was part of the process. But we started with the assessment and the database. I can share it with you if you're interested. I can tell you exactly how many hotels we had, how many restaurants we had in the path that we defined, or the route that we defined. And that was the starting point. How many airports we had, how many ports we had, so that we can make sure that each one had the right quality, and it was part of the process, because we didn't want to have anyone who didn't know what was the Maya or left like he was outside of the process.
Another question for you. These SMEs are small companies, most family-run businesses, family-run hotels, family-run restaurants. These people didn't have the experience, so they didn't have the money to set up or to develop the hotel, or to build the restaurants, or to operate a company or transportation company. Did you have to train them? Did you have to finance them with loans? We saw some of these buildings from some cities. You had to color the buildings. This is lots of money. They need money to support
Yes.
and be trained. How did you do that? How did you get them involved?
Well, we had to make it easier, 3 or 4 types of different SMEs. We had the SMEs that they were very, very successful, business, family owned, but for many years that they already had the expertise and they developed that on their own. Then we had some new startups that they were not that experts. Then we had some that unfortunately were not that successful, okay, and they needed the training. And then we had some that they were ready to go to the next level, to make it easier, right? More than that. So that's why we also partnered with the academia, with the universities. And we partnered also with the financial sector, so that they would provide, and our Ministry of Economy work with the financial sector to be able to provide small loans to some of them. Now, did everyone need a loans? No. Keep in mind that after the assessment, you have a good idea of who is capable of providing the service with quality. It's just a matter that they didn't have the customers, didn't have the clients, right? Some were ready from day one. Some needed the training and some needed the money. So that was part of the process. When we did the assessment, we learned what is it that most of them needed, and we had a little bit of everything. But the academia helped us. The unions also help us, because we were able to provide training, train the trainer, and they help us. And now, when we launched, was everyone ready 100%? No. But you know what? Most of them were almost ready, or they had a good level, and they developed the rest on the process. You will see that the first year that we launched, a lot of them were able to get their certification, because that's the other thing that we did. We launched some certifications, and we trained some third-party companies to do the trainer, and some others to do the certification. So these companies would train SMEs, and these would certify, and then we'll give them a distinction. You're already certified. You have a distinguished called M of Moderniza, which is modern, that you have invested in the business capabilities and the technology. But that was just to complement and improve the quality. Are we in the right place at a country level? No, not yet. It's going to take us some time. But I can tell you that we built the foundation needed to take this to the next level. There's a question right here, I think. There's a question on the other lady's side. I can hear you, but I don't know if everyone.
We didn't have the DNA, that's another problem. The problem we are facing, we didn't have unions. The associations are new, we have the new associations, they are new, they are ineffective for now. So it's a difficult job. As Abdullah is working on developing the tourism routes. So the tourism routes didn't release SMEs, small companies. So we didn't have the tools, we didn't have associations, unions. If we didn't have the DNAs in the local communities, I think it's a difficult job to do. I think this is a big project that we have to work on.
That's good. The good news is that you guys have the heritage, and you have a wonderful culture, and you have a wonderful opportunity. And I think it's a good job has been done. It's just a matter of continuing this job and taking to the next level. And we're here to help. That's for sure. Okay. Thank you very much. Shukran.
أعدل على البنت المتوسط لك.
أنا أبو رمزي أنا من غير
قديش طلع عمرها؟
18 سنة. داخلة مدرسة داخلة. خذوا امشي.
هو هيك شكله. هذا لحاله.
الهيئة العامة للسياحة والآثار. ملتقى السفر والاستثمار السياحي.